Joining us now here on a Monday after most of week one is in the books is the host of the Green Light Pod, none other than Chris Long. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
Rich, how we doing, man?
I'm great, man. We got a week one in the NFL season almost in the books here. What stands out to you? I'll go macro first. What stands out to you from the first few games?
How hard it is to watch 14 hours of football nearing 40 years old. I think it's like it's an age thing, just like when you play in the league. It's like every year, like, man, this gets harder and harder. I was wiped after last night, especially we got free football last night. I guess for me, we learned a lot in the first two primetime games, and as much as you can in week one, because you had two, three, four of the best teams in the league playing, and everybody's holding their breath and they're waiting to see the Bengals play for one. And they lay an egg. I just got done watching that tape, and I don't want to make it all about the Bengals. They always start slow, that sort of thing. It's not like, Baltimore looked great the other night, although they lost to Kansas City, which is a much different thing. The Bengals start slow. They didn't look great at times. More than anything, New England just had a great game plan and stuck to it. And I think Gerard Mayo deserves a ton of credit. Alex Van Pelt, like the whole group. It wasn't rocket science, but they didn't outsmart themselves. I mean, they got in 13 personnel, with three tight ends in there, one of those being a big tackle that they'd put in as a big tight end, right? So they're just trying to collapse the edge down and make those guys tackle on the edge, the Cincinnati guys. And I don't mean the defensive line. I mean guys like Hill. And they just kept giving the ball to Stevenson. And in situations, they go empty. They get their matchups in man. They run little in cuts. And it was just they didn't get bored doing the simple things. And that's very New England. It really is. And I think Gerard Mayo is going to be a heck of a coach. Proud of him. Draft class of 2008. Virginia native. Just a tremendous guy. And you can see them as they kind of let them in post game. You would think you were in like somebody's sarcophagus. Like it was like such a rare look into something. They were like, oh my God, let's go to the Patriots locker room. You know what I mean, Rich?
Yeah.
They were nuts. And it didn't disappoint because Gerard Mayo seems authentically him, and it seems like those players really have his back. It was just great. And the offense didn't perform well for the Bengals, but they're also missing T. Higgins. They're adjusting to a new back in the backfield. Gesicki seems to be like he's going to be an exciting target for him. Listen, if they tie that game 7-7 on that Gesicki ball, which was beautiful, they also had Irwin on a crosser. The play before Duggar got depth, kind of closed that window. The play that everybody's going to remember is the Tanner Hudson play. The very next play after that Gesicki ball that just came incomplete. Duggar's also there to force that. And I can't talk about the Patriots defense without talking about Keon White, a guy I've been really high on for 2 years. He looked like the best player on the field.
So when it's all said and done, because usually we wait until like weeks 2, 3, or 4 if we get you to do the levels of concern for Chris Long, you would put the Bengals in terms of level of concern below the Raiders, maybe, or a team?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, relative to the expectations, maybe there's concern, but, with the history and context, like who the Bengals have been early in seasons, this is Joe's first full preseason. I thought he might look a little better, but he's still coming off that injury. The Raiders, I don't expect too much out of them this year. You know what I mean? The defense is going to be stingy, but the quarterback play is the quarterback play, not to be dismissive of Gardner Minshew. I think he's a lot of fun to watch, but it's not like he's surrounded by a whole lot. Other than number one and maybe 2 exciting tight ends, which is enough for some very good quarterbacks, but I don't know.
What about the Browns? Based on their performance, what's your level of concern there for the Browns?
Cooked.
Cooked?
Yeah, Rich, wait. I know we're not supposed to do this, and I'm going into my show, and I have a mantra this morning. It is week one.
Yes.
It is week one.
Yes.
It is week one. Right?
Yeah.
But not with the Browns, because Joe Flacco ain't walking through that door. You let him walk. Unless, all right, I like to be fair, but I'm not a fool. Cleveland, the biggest fly on the wall to me, like what was this view like? Everybody in that organization. You know how long training camp is? I mean, it's not as long as it used to be, but it's long enough for you to see a train coming down the tracks for like weeks. And I feel like there must be a sense in that building that like they knew this was coming. I don't know if they knew how low the floor was and Dallas just exposed it because of the rush and that sort of thing. And you're down 2 tackles. But Deshaun doesn't look physically right. He doesn't look mentally right. How we got here, that's for another conversation. But I look at this and if you're Cleveland, you have to be saying, the guys that made the gamble on bringing him in. They got to be, it's like, I've been there in a sports book, not with my life savings on the line, but like watching the dumb bet I made go up in flames. And I got to feel like they're feeling like that in real time. There's no escape. And they actually burnt their only exit, which is the Joe Flacco thing. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Jameis Winston. Maybe he revives his career. We've seen it happen with Geno Smith and that sort of thing. But uh, Cleveland looked rough. I think they gave up 4 scoring drives in like 11 minutes in the second quarter. It was like they couldn't even get to the half. They'd have the ball 5 plays and managed to eat up 40 seconds of clock. It was like the coaches were shocked how hard it was to run the offense.
Well, in terms of the offensive line, though, Chris, no doubt, and that's where, you know, with Dallas's defense and the way Mike Zimmer had these guys all fired up, and Micah Parsons looked stupendous, and the line for the Browns was difficult to protect. You put this on Deshaun, though, because there were times, I'm with you, where he would just throw for Amari Cooper in the end zone, and the ball hit the back wall. Or he'd be looking for Judy on the sideline, and it damn near hit the kicking net. You know what I mean? Like, those are some of the throws. I was just looking around saying, wow, that is way off. There was another time he took one right in the chops, put it right in Cooper's hands, and it went through his hands.
And he dropped it. And that was the kind of game it was. Not that would have made any difference. I think their only shot was to maybe get that pick that they didn't come up with early or fall on the strip sack, because that game was never going to play out the way they wanted it to play down multiple scores. When they gave up those scores before the half, it was like, there's no escape. You know, Greg Williams used to say, lock the gates. We got them for 60 minutes. Like, they can't get out. And Greg, interestingly, who actually works in the media in Cleveland now, he was probably thinking yesterday watching that game, like, the gates are locked on the Browns. Like, they can't get out. And it was painful to watch.
But you're saying the gates are locked on Deshaun's contract. So you put this on number 4 right here.
Well, I'm not balking at answering the question in one word for any reason other than I want you guys to understand me exactly and clearly.
Yes, sir.
It is on anybody who had a say in bringing him to Cleveland. It is on Deshaun in the context of the game. But it's not like he could have done anything different. I really think at this point that's who he is. I don't know if physically he's shot. When you go back, Rich, I know you like to say I don't have any people, it's just me, but tell your stat guys.
Yes, sir.
To look up how many times Deshaun Watson was hit and sacked over the first few years of his career, compared to Joe Burrow, compared to Andrew Luck. I think it's more. And it was hidden so well because he had such success and he was so electric. But he took a beating. And so there was obviously the off the field stuff, which we're all kind of like, hey, there's some people that never want to give him a chance again. There's some people like myself who, whatever happens, happens, man. I don't feel, too bad for a guy that got that kind of deal coming off what happened. And then there's people that probably aren't looking at it as clearly as the people who added that statistic up. I mean, we did it a year ago and it was eye-opening how many times he got hit in Houston. So, well, everybody's like, hey, is it morally the right thing to bring him in? He might have been like scrap metal. And I look at him now and I'm like, I don't know if his arm's shot or what, but his mind's definitely not right either. He has no confidence. And yeah, 2 tackles are down, but this is a team we were like, whoa, they got a great roster. This is like a Super Bowl kind of roster. The question's just the quarterback. And DeJuan Jones got some. Y'all told me, not y'all, but the Browns. The tape told me that DeJuan Jones could hold up last year. So you're down a tackle, you're down a running back, and maybe that's what we should come to expect from a team like that. And Njoku's down now. I just don't think there's anybody coming to the rescue. This defense is good enough to win some games, but I just want to give Dallas credit. That was the defense when you walked away that was like, man, as we all kind of prepared for Dallas's demise, myself included, and I still think they got a lot to prove to not be the same team in the postseason, Rich. But as far as what they put on the field yesterday, the first 10 minutes of that game offensively, there were a lot of wow moments where it was like, oh, Zeke can still hurdle guys. Lamb's slicing and dicing people. Dak, who got the contract, very happy for that guy, the person, and the player, because yesterday he looked like he deserved it. For Dak, the questions are going to be asked in December and January. If he looks like this team's going to be fine. And hand up if I was praying or forecasting their demise, because Zimmer looks like he's got the defense humming. That is, again, a pretty anemic group offensively, but that rush was incredible yesterday. And Kendrick's coming up with a big play. When you look back at Zimmer in Minnesota, it makes a lot of sense, making a leap of logic that they might actually be just as good on defense this year.
Chris Long, the host of the Greenlight Pod with Chris Long right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So you mentioned how you learned a lot from the first two nationally televised games, Thursday opening night, Friday as well. The Sunday action in relation to what we saw from the Chiefs on opening night. Which team? We saw Houston perform what they did in Indianapolis. We saw also, obviously, the Bills coming from behind against Arizona at home. We saw Miami struggling offensively against Jacksonville, which looked pretty darn good up until the very end of that game. Any first blush sense as to who might be able to knock the Chiefs off 16, 17, 18 weeks from now, or is this still too early to have this conversation, Chris?
I mean, I would have told you this 2 days ago, but the Texans have got that chance. I think the Chiefs are going to see better offenses, and that's not to say Lamar's not spectacular, but they didn't do anything to help him this offseason. 3 offensive linemen, you got to replace those guys. That looked like a problem. They're going to have to work through that, right? You got to find a way to get Likely the ball more. Zay Flowers hasn't been spectacular yet, but it's very early. I just don't look at that group and say, like, hey, they're going to be able to outscore KC, although they almost did. But, as much as we made about Baltimore playing really poorly, like Kansas City still played like drunk Kansas City last year. They just were like a fun drunk. The minute Xavier Worthy, and I said this the other night on YouTube on my little breakdown.
Yeah.
I will always remember where I was when Xavier Worthy touched a football on national TV in the NFL. Like, it was one of those moments where I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh, he's going to get the ball. Oh, this will probably be a 3-yard gain, but we'll be like, wow, he's fast. And then he took off, and I haven't seen anybody run like that. I mean, I know some people are going to be like, chill out. Tyreek was just there and that sort of thing. But remember the way that offense looked with that kind of a speed advantage outside. And now you've got guys in Hollywood Brown when he comes back who actually can run routes. And I don't mean that relative to Tyreek. I mean, like, he had MVS last year with a lot of speed, but now you got guys who can run the whole route tree. The offensive line looks pretty strong. I think Kansas City is going to be right back in that spot, in the championship game with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. There's some teams in week one we overthink and we might like have wrong, but Kansas City has done this long enough that they look like a better team. And I think the Texans, just on the strength of that quarterback, what they did to their roster, that's a really tough division game they played yesterday. And like the 3rd and 11 at the end of the game, CJ Stroud, some of the circus throws he makes, unbelievable. I also don't sleep on the Bills, man.
Okay.
Because I watched that game, was enthralled with that game. I don't know about anybody else. And I just, seeing them get jumped 17-3, the defense is obviously a little bit different. Josh played really well as the game got going. He missed 1 or 2 balls late, but I think he converted. Well, he completed his first 9 or 10 throws, and there were just a ton of moments with his legs, with the checks he got them into in the red zone. Khalil Shakir is a hero. I mean, that dude, there were multiple plays yesterday that if he doesn't make them, if he doesn't break a tackle, they're not getting the 2-for-1 before and out of the half. They're not scoring late on that screen. He was just great. And Keon Coleman has got some body control, man. When I went up to camp and talked to Josh Allen, he talked about body control. He compared him to Mike Thomas, some of those guys. And you could tell he's glowing with having this guy. And when he made that catch on the right sideline late in the game, I was like, wow, they might have something they actually haven't had before. Now, I'm not trying to sell you something because I picked the Bills to win the East. But what I am saying is the offense looks fine. The thing we got to get shaken out is the defense. And they played a very good group in Arizona yesterday. Not for nothing, Arizona. Every team that's going to play Arizona this year is going to walk in the locker room and say, if you won, it's like, that was a hell of an offense. I mean, Kyler Murray played great, and Petzing called a great game. The one thing he probably wants back is that kicking a field goal late in the game. That was an incredible game for those of y'all who watched it. There were a lot of great games. I know we were all watching Caleb Williams, but there were a lot of great games. And Caleb Williams.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that before I let you go, Chris. The rookies and what we saw out of Caleb and obviously Jayden Daniels, Bo Nix. I mean, you talk about a very difficult spot to play in week one. I would imagine Seattle has to be it. But I'll give you the floor on that before I let you go.
Well, listen, I want to give credit to Denard Wilson's defense in Tennessee. I'm not going to make this about heaping, criticism on Caleb Williams, who I don't expect Patrick Mahomes year one. That might be some people listening to this, so I'm not going to hugely overreact. I think he's going to come on and make some special throws this year. But what did you expect week one? In May, when we were looking at the schedule, I was like, I'm betting this game. I'm betting the Titans. And, of course, my dumb ass lost the bet, but I felt like I was on the right side the entire game. If you watch that game, Denard, that defense, they were humming, and Caleb couldn't make the throws. It's week one, okay? Timing looks suspect for a lot of quarterbacks, so this isn't me bearing him. But if you're expecting Patrick Mahomes, you're going to be disappointing. It's week one of the NFL season. I think the timing on some of those go balls is an issue. And I think sometimes taking something off for him is going to be a struggle because he's got such a strong arm. And he does have some special talents. But, leave it to Will Levis to hand him his first NFL victory. I mean, some of the plays Levis was so gutsy in so many spots. But at the same time, to give them the game like that towards the end in a couple spots was just – if that team's going to win games this year, they got to play within themselves when he's back there throwing the football. You can still run. You can still do the varsity blues thing, Will Levis, but you can't do the Brett Favre thing. You're not Brett Favre, and so I was impressed with Denard Wilson. I was impressed with some of the play calling offensively for the Titans. I thought Callahan did a really nice job through the middle of that game. I haven't gotten to the Bucs game, had it on my small TV.
Okay.
The buzz is that Jayden hung tough. I think the Buccaneers are the best team in the NFC South. I think we saw that yesterday. If you're making it a 2-horse race, but New Orleans probably has something to say about that.
Yeah, and then Bo Nix obviously was in a tough spot in Seattle, and for sure, yeah, he was checking it down quite a bit. But I got a lot of heat, man, on X for saying that there's a lot to like about him. I don't know, man. I just kind of like the fact that he took the chops. It didn't seem like he was, he just passed the eye test for me many times yesterday. I don't know. I know he's checked down Charlie, but really,
I don't think anybody should get buried over a week one quarterback take unless it's totally hyperbolic, and you also have to keep in mind last year, CJ Stroud, who to me is one of the best 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Yep.
Looked like a human being week one. I mean, of course he was playing the Ravens, but this is something where you need a bigger sample size on all of these guys. And if you have hope and reason to believe as a Broncos fan, I don't think you're crazy because they look tough for a lot of the day. And I thought the Seahawks got it out as well. I mean, they couldn't have started much worse. I got to dig into the all-22 on that game, but they kept the points down while the offense got it going. And that's a tough place to play if you're a rookie quarterback.
Chris, you're the man. I didn't even hit Saquon.
I can't come on this show. Hold on. And talk about Sam Darnold.
Okay.
Hey, no, I just want to say this.
I give you the floor. I was going to go Saquon since he plussed up the Eagles quite a bit, but that was.
Let's do Saquon, but just on the record, we did mention Sam Darnold and how damn good he looked, And I, for one, am not surprised. Let's talk about Saquon Barkley.
No. Listen, and you want to talk about exercising ghosts. He went into the place where he famously saw ghosts.
Yeah.
And took care of business. He was terrific. But,
that was great.
But I'm not surprised either. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell's great, and Justin Jefferson's no slouch to throw to, and Aaron Jones looked great too. So the Vikings deserve the flowers there. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Saquon to you and what you think. Like, that's not an outlier, right? Like, this is him and behind this line and this offense, and this is what we're going to see this year, I think, health-wise too.
Let me put on my green glasses here.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit of a homer, but I also they weren't a very good team last year at the end of the season. So like that was obvious. They were sliding. They got better. That's one thing you can say about that team immediately. I thought Kellen Moore, Saquon was. I'm so happy for Saquon as a dude, as a player. I've been on a bad franchise where, like we're winning one game a season or two games a season, and, our ceiling's 7. And that was my career in St. Louis. And so I can definitely, and I was never Saquon, while I was like, I'm wasting some talent. Like this guy's wasting a lot of talent in New York. And to see him get an opportunity, knowing the kind of guy he is, not personally, but hearing about him, seeing how happy he looked after the game. I just really want this to work out. And I think it is going to work out. And I think it's the perfect marriage for both groups. I mean, you think about Howie Roseman, who hadn't invested in the running back room, and then he goes and gets the guy. And I think Kellen Moore was great. There was a lot of pre-snap motion. They were under center some. There were hot answers versus the blitz. Like this group got better schematically immediately. And I thought the guys on the back end hung tough. Mitchell, who they really like, hung tough. He dropped it deep over like at some point in the game late, but generally very, very good. And Zach Bond, people are like, oh, Devin White didn't get on the plane. Zach Bond did a terrific job in all phases of the game. He's going to be a kind of like an unexpected star for them. Howie's brought in veteran free agents before that people were like, oh, they're going to make a difference, but maybe this guy makes a huge difference. And then same thing, the front with the hidden plays, in the red zone, forcing a hold, BG 9 and the young kid 97, forcing Jordan Love to throw the ball to the back of the end zone late in that game and force a field goal. Jalen Carter was really disruptive. Okay. Like the injury was totally unfortunate. And certainly not dirty for anybody. I read some about, hey, I was dirty. Like you people have never been on the ground scratching and clawing for your livelihood with a hand around a guy's ankle. You don't know who's on top. You're just trying to get the person down. Jalen Carter is disruptive as hell. Jordan Davis had a nice day. So I do think the Eagles got better and they're exciting. It just, you watch Dallas and you're like, okay, it is truly a 2-horse race because Dallas looks like they're pretty good.
You're the man, Chris Long. I know you got your show, The Green Light Pod with Chris Long. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, your channel, correct, Chris?
That's right.
You're the man. Anytime you need me, you know that. Anytime.
I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it. Go Blue. I'm sorry.
Listen, all good, man. I am dining off of 2023 the rest of my life. You're like
a Virginia basketball fan. No amount of UMBC. No, it couldn't hurt me. All right.
You're the best, Chris. Take care of yourself, pal. That's Chris Long, everybody. Check out the Green Light with Chris Long pod wherever you get your pods and, of course, on YouTube. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern for free.